So according to Ayurveda, food is actually one of the main pillars of life. And since most of us eat at least 3 times a day, food or the quality of the food that we take in greatly determines our general state of health and well-being. So most of us in the Western Hemisphere, we are so used to looking at food in terms of macronutrients or micronutrients, like fats versus proteins versus carbohydrates, or vitamins versus minerals. But actually Eastern medicine, and this includes both Chinese medicine, Tibetan medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, we look at food energetically. And you may ask, what does that really mean? How do we look at food energetically? Looking at food energetically means we are looking what effect, what quality a certain food has, and what effect that food has as a result on the physiology or on the doshas. Yeah? So we look, for example, the taste. We look at the taste of a food. Is it sweet or sour? Is it salty or bitter? Then we look at the quality. Is it heating or cooling? Is it very light or is it very heavy? Is it drying or moistening? Is it dense or very light? Yeah? So we look at foods in terms of gunas, qualities, rasa or taste, and their effect on the dosha. So it's a little bit, at the beginning it might be a little bit foreign to most of us to be looking at food that way, but Eastern medicine has been doing that for thousands of years. And what I want to do now with you is I want to take you through those 3 doshic types that I spoke about in the first video. And I want to look at a little bit in general, without going too much into detail, in general, what kind of foods may be suitable and why for a particular dosha. Yeah? So we will start with vata, which, if you remember, is the space and the air element. And we said the qualities of vata, or of wind, usually are cold, dry, light, rough, subtle, mobile, clear. So vata in general, because of those qualities, does much better with warm, cooked, nourishing, slightly moist, with a little bit of oil foods. Yeah? So instead of a big salad, or instead of crackers or popcorn, a bowl of soup or a stew with warming spices is a much better way of supporting a vata kind of digestion. And when I say vata in terms of constitution, I also mean in terms of season, because we see that throughout the year the doshas alternate. In fall season, what we're in right now, in fall season, we are experiencing aggravated or elevated vata. So the fall diet, again, we're moving from the summer, from the season of all these summer fruits and salads and cucumbers and all sorts of things. We're moving now into fall season, and when we look at what nature gives us in this particular season, it's actually exactly what balances vata dosha or our physiology in that season. So think about this. Think about all the root vegetables that are coming out now, like carrots, beets, pumpkin, sweet potatoes. They are all heavy in the earth element. And because vata is so light, vata people usually do very well with grounding heavier foods. So if you're not vegetarian, for example, meats or nuts and seeds, or the root vegetables. Yeah? They don't do so well with very cold foods, like your zeytinyağlı dishes that are straight from the fridge, right? Like, or ice cream or cold cheese. These kind of things are not suitable for fall or vata dosha. So breakfast, for example, if in summer you've tended towards more of a Turkish style kind of breakfast with lots of, cheese and olives and cucumbers and tomatoes. In fall and winter, you want to move towards something warm. So it could be, for example, some cooked oatmeal with some cinnamon, some warming spices, cinnamon, ginger, a little bit of walnuts or almonds in there. Or it could be a bowl of soup. I think in Turkey, in some regions, you are very much used to, in the winter, drinking soup for breakfast, for example. And then for lunch and dinner, it would be, again, a warm soup or a warm stew, rather than like a cold salad or a dry cold sandwich, or lots of just fruits and nothing else. In terms of tastes, I haven't really talked about the tastes so much, but in Ayurveda there are 6 tastes, and 3 of those 6 tastes are really helpful for Vata because they balance the dry and light and rough quality. And those tastes are sweet, sour and salty. So by sweet I mean not necessarily sugar, but grains, for example, are sweet. Root vegetables are sweet. Sour would be a little bit of lemon or orange, or a little bit of apple cider vinegar. And then salty would be, of course, like fish that comes out of the ocean, or like salt that you put onto a meal. Vata people, or in Vata season, in fall, we do well with some spices. So the gently warming spices like cumin, coriander, fennel, ginger, cinnamon, cardamom, they are all really nice spices to start adding to your foods in fall. And like I said in the first video, if you remember, the key word for Vata was routine. So regular meal times is super important for Vata, because when Vata people, usually when they're busy, they tend to forget to eat. And actually for their energy and for their metabolism, they need to eat regularly. So eating proper meals and not just snacking here and there and a quick sandwich here and then a few nuts there, but really sitting down and eating quietly and with pleasure 3 times a day is super important for Vata. Yeah? The next dosha is Pitta dosha, and Pitta dosha, if you remember, is the fire and the water elements, and it corresponds in the year to summer. And if you think about Pitta, I mean, Pitta is fire, so Pitta is heat, it's intensity, it's sharpness, right? So you want to make sure that you are avoiding anything that makes that fire burst or explode, right? So you want to avoid things that can increase the fire. That would be, for example, alcohol or lots of spices, like lots of pulbibers, or very sour things, a lot of fermented things. So summer, or when your Pitta is high, is not a good time to eat really heavy meat dishes with lots of oil and lots of spices, or to eat or to drink a lot of heating shalgam suyu, or eat lots of turşu, or have lots of wine. Yeah? In summer, generally we tend to want to eat lighter, more summer kind of things, like melons or cucumbers, tomatoes, all these summer fruits and vegetables that help to cool the body down. So for Pitta people do better than Vata people with some raw foods, so especially dark leafy greens like roka, maidanos, nane, dereotu. All of those are superb liver cleansers, and they help to balance that fire aspect that Pitta have. And they help to balance this tendency of Pitta constitutions to be overly acidic in their bodies. So they do well with lots of veggies, mung beans, cucumbers, green beans, zucchini. All of those are really, really good. Really good. Pomegranates are fantastic for Pitta. They cleanse the blood, they cool the body. In terms of spices, Pitta people do well with not so much spice because already they have a lot of fire or Agni in the body, but the cooling spices like mint or cumin or coriander or fennel, they're good. But stay away from things like too much ginger, too much cinnamon, too much clove, pulbibeth. Those tend to throw Pitta out of balance a little bit. For Pitta also, it's good to eat regularly because, as I mentioned in the first video, otherwise Pitta people become unbearable to be around. So when Pitta people are hungry, they need to eat for sure. It's always good to make lunch the biggest meal and to make dinner lighter, because lunch, when the sun is at the highest point in the environment, Agni, the fire principle in the body, is the strongest. So our digestion works the best at noon or 1 o'clock and not 9 o'clock at night when we sit down to a big meze table with lots of food, right? So this is also something we talk about a lot in Ayurveda, that the timing, and we will talk about this in the next video, but the timing of when to do what, when to eat what is really important in Ayurveda. So the last dosha, Kapha dosha, which is the heaviest of the doshas, which is earth and water, corresponds to spring, late winter spring. I would say probably from January until the end of March, April is the time. It's actually the time when you see the snow in the mountains starting to melt. And it is said in the classical texts in Ayurveda, just like the snow in the mountains start to melt, the kapha that has accumulated over winter starts to melt in the body, and then lots of kapha related disorders happen in spring actually. So this allergies, congestion, getting sick, feeling very tired, lethargic, spring depression, all of these things are actually signs that kapha dosha is out of balance. And because kapha has these gunas, or these qualities of being very heavy and very stable and sticky, foods that have these kind of qualities are really not good for kapha. So what's really heavy, stable and sticky? For example, cheese, right? Like, so all dairy products, or hamur, yani börek, poacha, these kind of things. Very oily things, meats, sweets, all of these things actually are really not good for kapha dosha. And because kapha dosha has also this quality of coldness, cold foods and drinks are also not good. So for kapha actually, kapha people usually feel great when fasting because their metabolism usually is slow anyways. So when they eat too much, they become too heavy. So kapha people can actually skip breakfast if they're not hungry in the morning. They usually feel much better just having a cup of coffee, and their energy will be higher. So they do actually well with intermittent fasting. You know, this intermittent fasting, this is just a side note now, but since I mentioned it, I want to say this. This idea that one thing is good for everybody really makes no sense from an Ayurvedic point of view. And just because everybody is doing intermittent fasting now doesn't mean that everybody should do intermittent fasting, right? We all have different bodies and we all have different constitutional requirements. A Vata person that skips breakfast will be ungrounded, nervous and anxious and weak the whole day long. So they don't do well skipping breakfast. But for a kapha person, it's the opposite. Actually, a kapha person, because they have already a lot of earth and stability in the system, they get energy from not eating a heavy breakfast in the morning. And then having a lunch around 1 or 2 o'clock, having a really good lunch, and then in the evening eating also very light, maybe just having a bowl of soup in the evening or some herbal tea and a little bit of dried fruit or something like that. Yeah. So the tastes that are really good for kapha is like spicy things, because kapha has this stagnant quality, this heavy stagnant quality. So things that are like stimulating and spicy are helpful. So black pepper, ginger, pulbibas, kekik, all of these pungent spices kind of kickstart the sluggish agni that kapha people tend to have. Heavy foods like the root vegetables that are so good for vata, right? They're not that good for kapha, because, or meat, or a lot of carbohydrates, right? So kapha people do much better from like lighter vegetables, lighter fruits, like apples, pears, or leafy green veggies, broccoli, cauliflower. These kind of things are much better for kapha. So for them, variety, stimulation, and not overdoing eating is super important, especially not eating a lot at night or first thing in the morning when the digestion hasn't kicked in. So what I want you to take away from this is this idea that we can look at food very differently if we look at it more energetically, and we can see, eating according to Ayurvedic principles doesn't mean I'm walking through my bakal with a food list constantly and I'm like, oh no, I'm vata, I can't eat this, I can only eat this, right? Like, it just means I'm looking at which qualities in my system are maybe needing some support. For example, if I have a lot of dryness in my body, eating lots of dry food like buckwheat or crackers doesn't make sense, because it will exacerbate that. But then eating lots of juicy, moist, oily foods like avocado or figs or a juicy smoothie or something like that will actually help counterbalance that dryness. Whereas if I have a lot of fire in my system, putting more fire, more spices into that doesn't make sense, right? I need cooling things. Or if I already feel very heavy, then eating a kilo of ice cream at night or eating, a tray of burek will just exacerbate that. So it's like Ayurvedic nutrition is really this dance with, what's happening in my system right now and what do I need to do to balance that? That's actually, to me, the beauty of Ayurveda in general, this beauty of the beauty of bio-individuality. Like, what works for you might not work for me, or what works for me today, today it's rainy, cloudy and cold, so today I might really need a bowl of warm soup. Tomorrow, if it's 30 degrees and sunny, maybe I feel much better eating a salad, right? So it's this cooperation or this coordination with what's happening in nature and in us. One of my teachers, Dr. Robert Svoboda, his guru, Vimalananda, who was quite the character actually in India, he always used to say this: you have to live with reality, otherwise reality comes to live with you. And it's really like this. The more we can cooperate with nature, the more enjoyable our ride will be. And I think when it comes to nutrition, it's this is no other place is this more valid than actually this place. So let's from here see how we can extend this now. In the next video, I will talk about this beautiful dance that we do actually with nature. So in the next video, we will look at how can we do what we do in complete sync and harmony with the rhythms of nature? So how can we time our activities, our sleep, our meals, so that we optimally flow with the rhythms of nature rather than pushing something uphill or going against that? So looking forward to seeing you in the next video.